that abortion does kill a baby, that at 42 days there are brain waves, at 21 days there is a heartbeat. Even recently now they're saying at 18 days there's a heartbeat. And many of our young ladies and young men do not understand that that is life. We know that life begins at conception, and we have to understand that sex is a responsibility. Now, the disparity of abortions in the African American community was staggering, and that's how we gleaned the name Black Genocide. It was from Jesse Jackson. Abortion is black genocide. What happens to a mind of a person, the moral fabric of a nation that can abort a baby without a pang of conscience? Where will we be 20 years from today? And I went down to help Trent Franks, who currently is under pressure, doing just what you just asked some people to do, step out. He stepped out and said 52% of all pregnancies, African American pregnancies, end in abortion. That's a fact. That's the truth. And people are calling him racist. People are calling him names and ridiculing him for making that comment. And so this is the absurdity of this. First of all, it's a fact. Second of all, it's the truth. Third, it comes from Alan Guttmacher, who sat on the board of Planned Parenthood, who happens to be very proud of that statistic because that's what they're getting paid to do. Kill black babies, bottom line. And so if you want to know about how many black babies are being killed by abortion, you go to Alan Guttmacher. I wouldn't even go to this to the census. I wouldn't go because many states don't report. But most of the abortuaries, most of the clinics are some way connected to Planned Parenthood, and the Alan Guttmacher Institute is privy to that information. So bottom line, people do not want to know the truth on this matter because they're going to have to make some changes if they acknowledge that this is going on. You know, your listeners ought to know that abortion is the most performed operation on a woman. If there's 12% African Americans in this country and they're accounting for, I'm going to use this figure, this is extremely conservative, 37% of the abortions of the nation. Yeah, that's 37%. That means that African American women, you know, are having this operation performed on them more than any other woman, and to the point where that it is genocidal when it comes to the number of live births. Why did I say that? Well, up until 1973, breast cancer was not an issue with African American women. It was not a problem. Now it's epidemic. And Joel Brin, who's from this great state of New Jersey, more or less did 28 studies, 21 conclusive, that there is a link between a woman who has an abortion, especially a first-term pregnancy, and chooses to abort, will, over 500% in some studies, have basically will contract breast cancer. It is a recent study in Turkey. They concluded 66% of women will contract breast cancer. Your chances increase 66%. And it's simply because when you miscarry, when a woman miscarries, the brain knows it and sends messages throughout the body, shut down. When you surgically do it, and you abort the child surgically, brain does not recognize that, and it continually sends signals, and what organ is affected by it the most is the breast of a woman. By the time it begins to shut down and realize there's no child, there's so many hormones and other things that are there, and they become cancerous later on. Now, African American women now lead the country in preterm deaths of their children because abortion is being sold to African American women as a contraceptive, which is unquestionably the most detrimental thing other than the death of the child, because you're now have created a situation with this woman that she's not able to carry full term when she wants a child. And so preterm deaths, once again, was not an issue in the African American community, and now they lead the country in that. Then there's the psychological problem with abortion. And I say psychological problem. It is this. The industry does not recognize, I'm talking about the medical industry, postpartum abortion syndrome. Now here a woman can miscarry and she can go through postpartum. But you're saying a woman that chooses to abort or may not choose to abort, coerced into abortion, will not go through postpartum? This is absurd to me, but that's presently the problem. There was a study done in Dayton. 85% of the women, 125 women did the study. 85% of them reported some type of psychological or physiological, but basically psychological malady. 55% were going through depression. Close to 60% were still crying. And no one wants to recognize this. And then here I am, the African-American preacher. And if you know anything about the African-American church, it is predominantly women. There are predominantly a number of women. In some cases, for every one man, there's 8 women in a church. For me to know these statistics and not think they're in my pew and not think that they're not visiting my church in pain, hurting, suicidal, increased drug use because of trying to bury themselves in that pain, increased alcohol, trying to hide from the pain of something missing. And so the health ramifications, let's leave the pro-life, pro-choice, Republican, Democrat, Independent out of it for right now. How can you, NAACP, I'm really upset with them. How can you push Rainbow Coalition? How can you, Congressional Black Caucus, not have a forum where doctors, I don't need to come in. Everyone knows my position on the social activism part of this and the moral position on this. You need to talk to doctors who would validate what I'm saying and authenticate the data so you can now National Advancement Association of the Advancement of Colored People, so the colored people can advance in their knowledge of this. Right now, you are advocating the decline. You're the antithesis of your name. And so the NAACP really needs to be held in account. I'm very much encouraged at the fact that Julian Bond is no longer there and that there will be another board president, and I'm hopefully that we can have some type of dialogue on this as a health issue. They're not supposed to be political anyway. So why are you making it political by not allowing this information to come forth? Is there any other reason why you would not allow this to come to the floor for discussion? So it is very, very frustrating to me that men and women can get up in the morning and censor information from other men and women that can make their lives better. It's very sad. Silent No More, Georgette Forney is a very good source to contact. Your listeners need to contact. When it comes to the data, they stay on top of that data pretty much, and it's very, 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 very important that women get this information. And it's very important for leadership to get this information, but it'll stagger you, the things that are going on with women when it comes to abortion that media refuses to write about or address. Well, right now, as stated, I think that Alan Guttmacher, the Guttmacher Institute, is the most safest place to get most abortion statistics. We find that he is saying that there's 1,786 African American children each day killed by abortion, just under 4,000. I think the average abortion costs around $450. It's Alan Guttmacher that reported that 52% of all African American pregnancies end in abortion. The censoring of information, in the interest of choice. Choice implies you've given me the information so I can make it an informed choice. If you hold that information from me, you have an agenda that I would not make an informed choice, and therefore I'd be fitting into your plan. And so these choice advocates are hypocrites, because if it was about choice, they'd be sitting right here with me. You may not even agree with my position on it, but because you're an advocate for choice, you know that means anybody who would censor information would be wrong, because I'm going to use that information to make a choice. So with the African American community, it's been the censoring of this information and not allowing the truth about abortion to come to the forefront of discussion. The National Cancer Research, a defector, has admitted that they have hid the data of the link between abortion and breast cancer. This is something like this in a movie. I mean, you don't believe this stuff is going on, and yet it's factual. Amy Johnson, a CEO, one of the leaders of Planned Parenthood, she had her own clinic. I forgot her position, and actually saw the abortion through the sonogram and quit the next day out of conscience. She actually saw the child fight off the scalpel. That to me, is basically sums it up. What is going on and why we do what we do. It's a sad epitaph right now on the legacy of this nation when it comes to this, and that's why it has to be turned around. But I had the privilege of meeting Amy in San Francisco, and to think that she saw this with her own visible eyes, unquestionably has probably left indelibly something that she could never be able to shake. I know I couldn't. Just saying it, it gets me emotional. And but yet, this is what's going on in America.